1926.451 General Requirements. This section does not apply to aerial lifts, the criteria for which are set out exclusively in 1926.453. 1926.451 A. Capacity. 1926.451 A1, except as provided in paragraphs A2, A3, A4, A5, and G of this section, each scaffold and scaffold component shall be capable of supporting, without failure, its own weight and at least 4 times the maximum intended load applied or transmitted to it. 1926.451 A2, direct connections to roofs and floors, and counterweights used to balance adjustable suspension scaffolds, shall be capable of resisting at least 4 times the tipping moment imposed by the scaffold operating at the rated load of the hoist, or 1.5, minimum, times the tipping moment imposed by the scaffold operating at the stall load of the hoist, whichever is greater. 1926.451 A3, each suspension rope, including connecting hardware, used on non-adjustable suspension scaffolds shall be capable of supporting, without failure, at least 6 times the maximum intended load applied or transmitted to that rope. 1926.451 A4, each suspension rope, including connecting hardware, used on adjustable suspension scaffolds shall be capable of supporting, without failure, at least 6 times the maximum intended load applied or transmitted to that rope with the scaffold operating at either the rated load of the hoist, or 2, minimum, times the stall load of the hoist, whichever is greater. 1926.451 A5, the stall load of any scaffold hoist shall not exceed 3 times its rated load. 1926.451 A6, scaffolds shall be designed by a qualified person and shall be constructed and loaded in accordance with that design. Non-mandatory Appendix A to this subpart contains examples of criteria that will enable an employer to comply with paragraph A of this section. 1926.451 B. Scaffold platform construction. 1926.451 B1, each platform on all working levels of scaffolds shall be fully planked or decked between the front uprights and the guardrail supports as follows. 1926.451 B1 I, each platform unit, e.g., scaffold plank, fabricated deck, or fabricated platform, shall be installed so that the space between adjacent units and the space between the platform and the uprights is no more than 1 inch (2.5 centimeters) wide, except where the employer can demonstrate that a wider space is necessary, for example, to fit around uprights when side brackets are used to extend the width of the platform. 1926.451 B1 2, where the employer makes the demonstration provided for in paragraph B1 I of this section, the platform shall be planked or decked as fully as possible and the remaining open space between the platform and the upright shall not exceed 9.5 inches, 24.1 centimeters. Exception to paragraph B1. The requirement in paragraph B1 to provide full planking or decking does not apply to platforms used solely as walkways or solely by employees performing scaffold erection or dismantling. In these situations, only the planking that the employer establishes is necessary to provide safe working conditions is required. 1926.451 B2, except as provided in paragraphs B2 I and B2 2 of this section, each scaffold platform and walkway shall be at least 18 inches 46 centimeters wide. 1926.451 B2 I, each ladder jack scaffold, top plate bracket scaffold, roof bracket scaffold, and pump jack scaffold shall be at least 12 inches 30 centimeters wide. There is no minimum width requirement for bosun's chairs. Note to paragraph B2 I. Pursuant to an administrative stay effective November 29, 1996 and published in the Federal Register on November 25, 1996, the requirement in paragraph B2 I that roof bracket scaffolds be at least 12 inches wide is stayed until November 25, 1997 or until rulemaking regarding the minimum width of roof bracket scaffolds has been completed, whichever is later. 1926.451 B2 2, where scaffolds must be used in areas that the employer can demonstrate are so narrow that platforms and walkways cannot be at least 18 inches 46 centimeters wide, such platforms and walkways shall be as wide as feasible, and employees on those platforms and walkways shall be protected from fall hazards by the use of guardrails and/or personal fall arrest systems. 1926.451, b. 3, except as provided in paragraphs b. 3, I, and 2 of this section, the frontage of all platforms shall not be more than 14 inches, 36 centimeters, from the face of the work, unless guardrail systems are erected along the front edge and/or personal fall arrest systems are used in accordance with paragraph G of this section to protect employees from falling. 1926.451, b. 3, I. The maximum distance from the face for outrigger scaffolds shall be 3 inches, 8 centimeters. 1926.451, b. 3, 2. The maximum distance from the face for plastering and lathing operations shall be 18 inches, 46 centimeters. 1926.451, b. 4. Each end of a platform, unless cleated or otherwise restrained by hooks or equivalent means, shall extend over the centerline of its support at least 6 inches, 15 centimeters. 1926.451, b. 5. 1926.451, b. 5, I. Each end of a platform 10 feet or less in length shall not extend over its support more than 12 inches, 30 centimeters, unless the platform is designed and installed so that the cantilevered portion of the platform is able to support employees and/or materials without tipping, or has guardrails which block employee access to the cantilevered end. 1926.451, b. 5, 2. Each platform greater than 10 feet in length shall not extend over its support more than 18 inches, 46 centimeters, unless it is designed and installed so that the cantilevered portion of the platform is able to support employees without tipping, or has guardrails which block employee access to the cantilevered end. 1926.451, b. 6. On scaffolds where scaffold planks are abutted to create a long platform, each abutted end shall rest on a separate support surface. This provision does not preclude the use of common support members, such as T-sections, to support abutting planks, or hook-on platforms designed to rest on common supports. 1926.451, b. 7. On scaffolds where platforms are overlapped to create a long platform, the overlap shall occur only over supports, and shall not be less than 12 inches, 30 centimeters, unless the platforms are nailed together or otherwise restrained to prevent movement. 1926.451, b. 8. At all points of a scaffold where the platform changes direction, such as turning a corner, any platform that rests on a bearer at an angle other than a right angle shall be laid first, and platforms which rest at right angles over the same bearer shall be laid second, on top of the first platform. 1926.451, b. 9. Wood platforms shall not be covered with opaque finishes, except that platform edges may be covered or marked for identification. Platforms may be coated periodically with wood preservatives, fire-retardant finishes, and slip-resistant finishes. However, the coating may not obscure the top or bottom wood surfaces. 1926.451, b. 10. Scaffold components manufactured by different manufacturers shall not be intermixed unless the components fit together without force and the scaffold's structural integrity is maintained by the user. Scaffold components manufactured by different manufacturers shall not be modified in order to intermix them unless a competent person determines the resulting scaffold is structurally sound. 1926.451, b. 11. Scaffold components made of dissimilar metals shall not be used together unless a competent person has determined that galvanic action will not reduce the strength of any component to a level below that required by paragraph A1 of this section. 1926.451, c. Criteria for supported scaffolds. 1926.451, c. 1. Supported scaffolds with a height to base width, including outrigger supports, if used, ratio of more than 4:1, shall be restrained from tipping by guying, tying, bracing, or equivalent means, as follows. 1926.451, c. 1, guys, ties, and braces shall be installed at locations where horizontal members support both inner and outer legs. 1926.451, c. 1, 2, guys, ties, and braces shall be installed according to the scaffold manufacturer's recommendations or at the closest horizontal member to the 4:1 height and be repeated vertically at locations of horizontal members every 20 feet, 6.1 meters, or less thereafter for scaffolds 3 feet, 0.91 meters wide or less, and every 26 feet, 7.9 meters or less thereafter for scaffolds greater than 3 feet, 0.91 meters wide. The top guy, tie, or brace of completed scaffolds shall be placed no further than the 4:1 height from the top. Such guys, ties and braces shall be installed at each end of the scaffold and at horizontal intervals not to exceed 30 feet 9.1 meters measured from one end, not both, towards the other. 1926.451 C1, 3, ties, guys, braces, or outriggers shall be used to prevent the tipping of supported scaffolds in all circumstances where an eccentric load, such as a cantilevered work platform, is applied or is transmitted to the scaffold. 1926.451 C2, supported scaffold poles, legs, posts, frames, and uprights shall bear on base plates and mud sills or other adequate firm foundation. 1926.451 C2 I, footings shall be level, sound, rigid, and capable of supporting the loaded scaffold without settling or displacement. 1926.451 C2 2, unstable objects shall not be used to support scaffolds or platform units. 1926.451 C2 3, unstable objects shall not be used as working platforms. 1926.451 C2 4, front-end loaders and similar pieces of equipment shall not be used to support scaffold platforms unless they have been specifically designed by the manufacturer for such use. 1926.451 C2 V, forklifts shall not be used to support scaffold platforms unless the entire platform is attached to the fork and the forklift is not moved horizontally while the platform is occupied. 1926.451 C3, supported scaffold poles, legs, posts, frames, and uprights shall be plumb and braced to prevent swaying and displacement. 1926.451 D, criteria for suspension scaffolds. 1926.451 D1, all suspension scaffold support devices, such as outrigger beams, cornice hooks, parapet clamps, and similar devices, shall rest on surfaces capable of supporting at least 4 times the load imposed on them by the scaffold operating at the rated load of the hoist, or at least 1.5 times the load imposed on them by the scaffold at the stall capacity of the hoist, whichever is greater. 1926.451 D2, suspension scaffold outrigger beams, when used, shall be made of structural metal or equivalent strength material, and shall be restrained to prevent movement. 1926.451 D3, the inboard ends of suspension scaffold outrigger beams shall be stabilized by bolts or other direct connections to the floor or roof deck, or they shall have their inboard ends stabilized by counterweights, except Mason's multi-point adjustable suspension scaffold outrigger beams shall not be stabilized by counterweights. 1926.451 D3 I, before the scaffold is used, direct connections shall be evaluated by a competent person who shall confirm, based on the evaluation, that the supporting surfaces are capable of supporting the loads to be imposed. In addition, Mason's multi-point adjustable suspension scaffold connections shall be designed by an engineer experienced in such scaffold design. 1926.451 D3 2, counterweights shall be made of non-flowable material. Sand, gravel and similar materials that can be easily dislocated shall not be used as counterweights. 1926.451 D3 3, only those items specifically designed as counterweights shall be used to counterweight scaffold systems. Construction materials such as, but not limited to, masonry units and rolls of roofing felt, shall not be used as counterweights. 1926.451 D3 4, counterweights shall be secured by mechanical means to the outrigger beams to prevent accidental displacement. 1926.451 D3 V, counterweights shall not be removed from an outrigger beam until the scaffold is disassembled. 1926.451 D3 6, outrigger beams which are not stabilized by bolts or other direct connections to the floor or roof deck shall be secured by tiebacks. 1926.451 D3 7, tiebacks shall be equivalent in strength to the suspension ropes. 1926.451 D3 8, outrigger beams shall be placed perpendicular to its bearing support, usually the face of the building or structure. However, where the employer can demonstrate that it is not possible to place an outrigger beam perpendicular to the face of the building or structure because of obstructions that cannot be moved, the outrigger beam may be placed at some other angle, provided opposing angle tiebacks are used. 1926.451 D3 9, Tiebacks shall be secured to a structurally sound anchorage on the building or structure. Sound anchorages include structural members, but do not include standpipes, vents, other piping systems, or electrical conduit. 1926.451 D3 X. Tiebacks shall be installed perpendicular to the face of the building or structure, or opposing angle tiebacks shall be installed. Single tiebacks installed at an angle are prohibited. 1926.451 D4. Suspension scaffold outrigger beams shall be 1926.451 D4 I through 1926.451 D4 V. Provided with stop bolts or shackles at both ends, securely fastened together with the flanges turned out when channel iron beams are used in place of I-beams. Installed with all bearing supports perpendicular to the beam center line, set and maintained with the web in a vertical position, and when an outrigger beam is used, the shackle or clevis with which the rope is attached to the outrigger beam shall be placed directly over the center line of the stirrup. 1926.451 D5. Suspension scaffold support devices such as cornice hooks, roof irons, parapet clamps, or similar devices shall be 1926.451 D5 I through 1926.451 D5 4. Made of steel, wrought iron, or materials of equivalent strength, supported by bearing blocks, and secured against movement by tiebacks installed at right angles to the face of the building or structure, or opposing angle tiebacks shall be installed and secured to a structurally sound point of anchorage on the building or structure. Sound points of anchorage include structural members, but do not include standpipes, vents, other piping systems, or electrical conduit. Tieback shall be equivalent in strength to the hoisting rope. 1926.451 D6. When winding drum hoists are used on a suspension scaffold, they shall contain not less than 4 wraps of the suspension rope at the lowest point of scaffold travel. When other types of hoists are used, the suspension ropes shall be long enough to allow the scaffold to be lowered to the level below without the rope end passing through the hoist, or the rope end shall be configured or provided with means to prevent the end from passing through the hoist. 1926.451 D7. The use of repaired wire rope as suspension rope is prohibited. 1926.451 D8. Wire suspension ropes shall not be joined together except through the use of I-splice thimbles connected with shackles or cover plates and bolts. 1926.451 D9. The load end of wire suspension ropes shall be equipped with proper size thimbles and secured by I-splicing or equivalent means. 1926.451 D10. Ropes shall be inspected for defects by a competent person prior to each workshift and after every occurrence which could affect a rope's integrity. Ropes shall be replaced if any of the following conditions exist. 1926.451 D10 I through 1926.451 D10 6. Any physical damage which impairs the function and strength of the rope. Kinks that might impair the tracking or wrapping of rope around the DRA or sheaves. 6 randomly distributed broken wires in one rope lay or 3 broken wires in one strand in one rope lay. Abrasion, corrosion, scrubbing, flattening or peening causing loss of more than 1/3 of the original diameter of the outside wires. Heat damage caused by a torch or any damage caused by contact with electrical wires. Evidence that the secondary brake has been activated during an overspeed condition and has engaged the suspension rope. 1926.451 D11. Swage detachments for spliced eyes on wire suspension ropes shall not be used unless they are made by the wire rope manufacturer or a qualified person. 1926.451 D12. When wire rope clips are used on suspension scaffolds. 1926.451 D12 I through 1926.451 D12 6. There shall be a minimum of 3 wire rope clips installed, with the clips a minimum of 6 rope diameters apart. Clips shall be installed according to the manufacturer's recommendations. Clips shall be retightened to the manufacturer's recommendations after the initial loading. Clips shall be inspected and retightened to the manufacturer's recommendations at the start of each workshift thereafter. U-bolt clips shall not be used at the point of suspension for any scaffold hoist. When U-bolt clips are used, the U-bolt shall be placed over the dead end of the rope, and the saddle shall be placed over the live end of the rope. 1926.451 D13. Suspension scaffold power-operated hoists and manual hoists shall be tested by a qualified testing laboratory. 1926.451 D14 Gasoline-powered equipment and hoists shall not be used on suspension scaffolds. 1926.451 D15 Gears and brakes of power-operated hoists used on suspension scaffolds shall be enclosed. 1926.451 D16 In addition to the normal operating brake, suspension scaffold power-operated hoists and manually operated hoists shall have a braking device or locking pawl which engages automatically when a hoist makes either of the following uncontrolled movements: an instantaneous change in momentum or an accelerated overspeed. 1926.451 D17 Manually operated hoists shall require a positive crank force to descend. 1926.451 D18 Two-point and multi-point suspension scaffolds shall be tied or otherwise secured to prevent them from swaying, as determined to be necessary based on an evaluation by a competent person. Window cleaners' anchors shall not be used for this purpose. 1926.451 D19 Devices whose sole function is to provide emergency escape and rescue shall not be used as working platforms. This provision does not preclude the use of systems which are designed to function both as suspension scaffolds and emergency systems. 1926.451 E. Access. This paragraph applies to scaffold access for all employees. Access requirements for employees erecting or dismantling supported scaffolds are specifically addressed in paragraph E9 of this section. 1926.451 E1 When scaffold platforms are more than 2 feet (0.6 meters) above or below a point of access, portable ladders, hook-on ladders, attachable ladders, stair towers, scaffold stairways/towers, stairway-type ladders, such as ladder stands, ramps, walkways, integral prefabricated scaffold access, or direct access from another scaffold, structure, personnel hoist, or similar surface shall be used. Crossbraces shall not be used as a means of access. 1926.451 E2 Portable, hook-on, and attachable ladders. Additional requirements for the proper construction and use of portable ladders are contained in Subpart X of this part. Stairways and ladders. 1926.451 E2 I through 1926.451 E2 6 Portable, hook-on, and attachable ladders shall be positioned so as not to tip the scaffold. Hook-on and attachable ladders shall be positioned so that their bottom rung is not more than 24 inches, 61 centimeters above the scaffold supporting level. When hook-on and attachable ladders are used on a supported scaffold more than 35 feet, 10.7 meters high, they shall have rest platforms at 35 foot, 10.7 m, maximum vertical intervals. Hook-on and attachable ladders shall be specifically designed for use with the type of scaffold used. Hook-on and attachable ladders shall have a minimum rung length of 11.5 inches, 29 centimeters, and hook-on and attachable ladders shall have uniformly spaced rungs with a maximum spacing between rungs of 16 3/4 inches. 1926.451 E3 Stairway-type ladders shall. 1926.451 E3 I through 1926.451 E3 4 be positioned such that their bottom step is not more than 24 inches, 61 centimeters above the scaffold supporting level. Be provided with rest platforms at 12 foot, 3.7 m, maximum vertical intervals. Have a minimum step width of 16 inches, 41 centimeters, except that mobile scaffold stairway-type ladders shall have a minimum step width of 11.5 inches, 30 centimeters, and have slip-resistant treads on all steps and landings. 1926.451 E4 Stair towers, scaffold stairway/towers, shall be positioned such that their bottom step is not more than 24 inches, 61 centimeters, above the scaffold supporting level. 1926.451 E4 I through 1926.451 E4 V A stair rail consisting of a top rail and a mid rail shall be provided on each side of each scaffold stairway. The top rail of each stair rail system shall also be capable of serving as a handrail, unless a separate handrail is provided. Handrails and top rails that serve as handrails shall provide an adequate handhold for employees grasping them to avoid falling. Stair rail systems and handrails shall be surfaced to prevent injury to employees from punctures or lacerations, and to prevent snagging of clothing. The ends of stair rail systems and handrails shall be constructed so that they do not constitute a projection hazard. 1926.451 E4-6 through 1926.451 E4-X. Handrails and top rails that are used as handrails shall be at least 3 inches (7.6 centimeters) from other objects. Stair rails shall be not less than 28 inches (71 centimeters) nor more than 37 inches (94 centimeters) from the upper surface of the stair rail to the surface of the tread, in line with the face of the riser at the forward edge of the tread. A landing platform at least 18 inches (45.7 centimeters) wide by at least 18 inches (45.7 centimeters) long shall be provided at each level. Each scaffold stairway shall be at least 18 inches (45.7 centimeters) wide between stair rails. Treads and landings shall have slip-resistant surfaces. 1926.451 E4-11 through 1926.451 E4-14. Stairway shall be installed between 40 degrees and 60 degrees from the horizontal. Guardrails meeting the requirements of paragraph G4 of this section shall be provided on the open sides and ends of each landing. Riser height shall be uniform, within a quarter inch (0.6 centimeters) for each flight of stairs. Greater variations in riser height are allowed for the top and bottom steps of the entire system, not for each flight of stairs. Tread depth shall be uniform, within a quarter inch, for each flight of stairs. 1926.451 E5 Ramps and walkways. 1926.451 E5 I through 1926.451 E5 3 Ramps and walkways 6 feet (1.8 meters) or more above lower levels shall have guardrail systems which comply with subpart M of this part fall protection. No ramp or walkway shall be inclined more than a slope of 1 vertical to 3 horizontal, 20 degrees above the horizontal. If the slope of a ramp or a walkway is steeper than 1 vertical and 8 horizontal, the ramp or walkway shall have cleats not more than 14 inches (35 centimeters) apart which are securely fastened to the planks to provide footing. 1926.451 E6 Integral prefabricated scaffold access frames shall. 1926.451 E6 I through 1926.451 E6-6 be specifically designed and constructed for use as ladder rungs, have a rung length of at least 8 inches (20 centimeters), not be used as work platforms when rungs are less than 11.5 inches in length, unless each affected employee uses fall protection or a positioning device which complies with 1926.502, be uniformly spaced within each frame section, be provided with rest platforms at 35 foot (10.7 m) maximum vertical intervals on all supported scaffolds more than 35 feet (10.7 meters) high, and have a maximum spacing between rungs of 16 3/4 inches (43 centimeters). Non-uniform rung spacing caused by joining end frames together is allowed, provided the resulting spacing does not exceed 16 3/4 inches (43 centimeters). 1926.451 E7 Steps and rungs of ladder and stairway type access shall line up vertically with each other between rest platforms. 1926.451 E8 Direct access to or from another surface shall be used only when the scaffold is not more than 14 inches (36 centimeters) horizontally and not more than 24 inches (61 centimeters) vertically from the other surface. 1926.451 E9 Effective September 2, 1997, access for employees erecting or dismantling supported scaffolds shall be in accordance with the following. 1926.451 E9 I through 1926.451 E9 4 The employer shall provide safe means of access for each employee erecting or dismantling a scaffold where the provision of safe access is feasible and does not create a greater hazard. The employer shall have a competent person determine whether it is feasible or would pose a greater hazard to provide, and have employees use a safe means of access. This determination shall be based on site conditions and the type of scaffold being erected or dismantled. Hook-on or attachable ladders shall be installed as soon as scaffold erection has progressed to a point that permits safe installation and use. When erecting or dismantling tubular welded frame scaffolds, end frames with horizontal members that are parallel, level and are not more than 22 inches apart vertically may be used as climbing devices for access, provided they are erected in a manner that creates a usable ladder and provides good hand-hold and foot space. Cross-braces on tubular welded frame scaffolds shall not be used as a means of access or egress. 1926.451, F. Use. 1926.451, F. 1. Scaffolds and scaffold components shall not be loaded in excess of their maximum intended loads or rated capacities, whichever is less. 1926.451, F. 2. The use of shore or lean-to scaffolds is prohibited. 1926.451, F. 3. Scaffolds and scaffold components shall be inspected for visible defects by a competent person before each work shift, and after any occurrence which could affect a scaffold's structural integrity. 1926.451, F. 4. Any part of a scaffold damaged or weakened such that its strength is less than that required by paragraph A of this section shall be immediately repaired or replaced, braced to meet those provisions, or removed from service until repaired. 1926.451, F. 5. Scaffolds shall not be moved horizontally while employees are on them, unless they have been designed by a registered professional engineer specifically for such movement or, for mobile scaffolds, where the provisions of 1926.452, W, are followed. 1926.451, F. 6. The clearance between scaffolds and power lines shall be as follows. Scaffolds shall not be erected, used, dismantled, altered, or moved such that they or any conductive material handled on them might come closer to exposed and energized power lines than as follows. For insulated lines less than 300 volts stay a minimum of 3 feet, or 0.9 meters. For insulated lines 300 volts to 50 kV stay a minimum of 10 feet, or 3.1 meters. For insulated lines more than 50 kV stay a minimum of 10 feet, or 3.1 meters, plus 0.4 inches, 1 centimeter, for each 1 kV over 50 kV. An alternative is 2 times the length of the line insulator, but never less than 10 feet, 3.1 meters. For uninsulated lines less than 50 kV stay a minimum of 10 feet, or 3.1 meters. For uninsulated lines more than 50 kV stay a minimum of 10 feet, or 3.1 meters, plus 0.4 inches, 1 centimeter, for each 1 kV over 50 kV. An alternative is 2 times the length of the line insulator, but never less than 10 feet, 3.1 meters. 1926.451, F. 7. Scaffolds shall be erected, moved, dismantled, or altered only under the supervision and direction of a competent person qualified in scaffold erection, moving, dismantling, or alteration. Such activities shall be performed only by experienced and trained employees selected for such work by the competent person. 1926.451, F. 8. Employees shall be prohibited from working on scaffolds covered with snow, ice, or other slippery material except as necessary for removal of such materials. 1926.451, F. 9. Where swinging loads are being hoisted onto or near scaffolds such that the loads might contact the scaffold, tag lines or equivalent measures to control the loads shall be used. 1926.451, F. 10. Suspension ropes supporting adjustable suspension scaffolds shall be of a diameter large enough to provide sufficient surface area for the functioning of brake and hoist mechanisms. 1926.451, F. 11. Suspension ropes shall be shielded from heat-producing processes. When acids or other corrosive substances are used on a scaffold, the rope shall be shielded, treated to protect against the corrosive substances, or shall be of a material that will not be damaged by the substance being used. 1926.451, F. 12. Work on or from scaffolds is prohibited during storms or high winds unless a competent person has determined that it is safe for employees to be on the scaffold and those employees are protected by a personal fall arrest system or windscreens. Windscreens shall not be used unless the scaffold is secured against the anticipated wind forces imposed. 1926.451, F. 13. Debris shall not be allowed to accumulate on platforms. 1926.451, F. 14. Makeshift devices, such as but not limited to boxes and barrels, shall not be used on top of scaffold platforms to increase the working level height of employees. 1926.451, F. 15. Ladders shall not be used on scaffolds to increase the working level height of employees, except on large area scaffolds where employers have satisfied the following criteria. 1926.451 F15 I through 1926.451 F15 4. When the ladder is placed against a structure which is not a part of the scaffold, the scaffold shall be secured against the sideways thrust exerted by the ladder. The platform units shall be secured to the scaffold to prevent their movement. The ladder legs shall be on the same platform or other means shall be provided to stabilize the ladder against unequal platform deflection, and the ladder legs shall be secured to prevent them from slipping or being pushed off the platform. 1926.451 F16. Platforms shall not deflect more than 1/60th of the span when loaded. 1926.451 F17. To reduce the possibility of welding current arcing through the suspension wire rope when performing welding from suspended scaffolds, the following precautions shall be taken, as applicable. 1926.451 F17 I. An insulated thimble shall be used to attach each suspension wire rope to its hanging support, such as cornice hook or outrigger. Excess suspension wire rope and any additional independent lines from grounding shall be insulated. 1926.451 F17 2. The suspension wire rope shall be covered with insulating material extending at least 4 feet, 1.2 meters above the hoist. If there is a tail line below the hoist, it shall be insulated to prevent contact with the platform. The portion of the tail line that hangs free below the scaffold shall be guided or retained, or both, so that it does not become grounded. 1926.451 F17 3. Each hoist shall be covered with insulated protective covers. 1926.451 F17 4. In addition to a work lead attachment required by the welding process, a grounding conductor shall be connected from the scaffold to the structure. The size of this conductor shall be at least the size of the welding process work lead, and this conductor shall not be in series with the welding process or the workpiece. 1926.451 F17 V. If the scaffold grounding lead is disconnected at any time, the welding machine shall be shut off, and 1926.451 F17 6. An active welding rod or uninsulated welding lead shall not be allowed to contact the scaffold or its suspension system. 1926.451 G. Fall protection. 1926.451 G1. Each employee on a scaffold more than 10 feet, 3.1 meters above a lower level shall be protected from falling to that lower level. Paragraphs G1 I through 7 of this section establish the types of fall protection to be provided to the employees on each type of scaffold. Paragraph G2 of this section addresses fall protection for scaffold erectors and dismantlers. Note to paragraph G1. The fall protection requirements for employees installing suspension scaffold support systems on floors, roofs, and other elevated surfaces are set forth in subpart M of this part. 1926.451 G1 I through 1926.451 G1 3. Each employee on a bosun's chair, catenary scaffold, float scaffold, needle beam scaffold, or ladder jack scaffold shall be protected by a personal fall arrest system. Each employee on a single-point or two-point adjustable suspension scaffold shall be protected by both a personal fall arrest system and guardrail system. Each employee on a crawling board, chicken ladder, shall be protected by a personal fall arrest system, a guardrail system, with minimum 200-pound top rail capacity, or by a 3/4 inch, 1.9 centimeters diameter grab line or equivalent handhold securely fastened beside each crawling board. 1926.451 G1 4 through 1926.451 G1 7. Each employee on a self-contained adjustable scaffold shall be protected by a guardrail system, with minimum 200-pound top rail capacity, when the platform is supported by the frame structure, and by both a personal fall arrest system and a guardrail system, with minimum 200-pound top rail capacity, when the platform is supported by ropes. Each employee on a walkway located within a scaffold shall be protected by a guardrail system, with minimum 200-pound top rail capacity, installed within 9.5 inches, 24.1 centimeters, of and along at least one side of the walkway. Each employee performing overhand bricklaying operations from a supported scaffold shall be protected from falling from all open sides and ends of the scaffold, except at the side next to the wall being laid, by the use of a personal fall arrest system, or guardrail system, with minimum 200-pound top rail capacity. For all scaffolds not otherwise specified in paragraphs G1I through G1-6 of this section, each employee shall be protected by the use of personal fall arrest systems or guardrail systems meeting the requirements of paragraph G4 of this section. 1926.451 G2. Effective September 2, 1997, the employer shall have a competent person determine the feasibility and safety of providing fall protection for employees erecting or dismantling supported scaffolds. Employers are required to provide fall protection for employees erecting or dismantling supported scaffolds where the installation and use of such protection is feasible and does not create a greater hazard. 1926.451 G3. In addition to meeting the requirements of 1926.502 D, personal fall arrest systems used on scaffolds shall be attached by lanyard to a vertical lifeline, horizontal lifeline, or scaffold structural member. Vertical lifelines shall not be used when overhead components, such as overhead protection or additional platform levels, are part of a single-point or two-point adjustable suspension scaffold. 1926.451 G3I through 1926.451 G3-4, when vertical lifelines are used, they shall be fastened to a fixed safe point of anchorage, shall be independent of the scaffold, and shall be protected from sharp edges and abrasion. Safe points of anchorage include structural members of buildings, but do not include standpipes, vents, other piping systems, electrical conduit, outrigger beams, or counterweights. When horizontal lifelines are used, they shall be secured to two or more structural members of the scaffold, or they may be looped around both suspension and independent suspension lines, on scaffolds so equipped, above the hoist and brake attached to the end of the scaffold. Horizontal lifelines shall not be attached only to the suspension ropes. When lanyards are connected to horizontal lifelines or structural members on a single-point or two-point adjustable suspension scaffold, the scaffold shall be equipped with additional independent support lines and automatic locking devices capable of stopping the fall of the scaffold in the event one or both of the suspension ropes fail. The independent support lines shall be equal in number and strength to the suspension ropes. Vertical lifelines, independent support lines, and suspension ropes shall not be attached to each other, nor shall they be attached to or use the same point of anchorage, nor shall they be attached to the same point on the scaffold or personal fall arrest system. 1926.451 G4. Guardrail systems installed to meet the requirements of this section shall comply with the following provisions. Guardrail systems built in accordance with Appendix A to this subpart will be deemed to meet the requirements of paragraphs G4, 7, 8, and 9 of this section. 1926.451 G4I through 1926.451 G4-4. Guardrail systems shall be installed along all open sides and ends of platforms. Guardrail systems shall be installed before the scaffold is released for use by employees other than erection/dismantling crews. The top edge height of top rails or equivalent member on supported scaffolds manufactured or placed in service after January 1, 2000 shall be installed between 38 inches (0.97 meters) and 45 inches (1.2 meters) above the platform surface. The top edge height on supported scaffolds manufactured and placed in service before January 1, 2000, and on all suspended scaffolds where both a guardrail and a personal fall arrest system are required shall be between 36 inches (0.9 meters) and 45 inches (1.2 meters). When conditions warrant, the height of the top edge may exceed the 45-inch height, provided the guardrail system meets all other criteria of paragraph G4. When mid-rails, screens, mesh, intermediate vertical members, solid panels, or equivalent structural members are used, they shall be installed between the top edge of the guardrail system and the scaffold platform. When mid-rails are used, they shall be installed at a height approximately midway between the top edge of the guardrail system and the platform surface. 1926.451 G4V through 1926.451 G4-9. When screens and mesh are used, they shall extend from the top edge of the guardrail system to the scaffold platform, and along the entire opening between the supports. When intermediate members, such as balusters or additional rails, are used, they shall not be more than 19 inches (48 centimeters) apart. Each top rail or equivalent member of a guardrail system shall be capable of withstanding, without failure, A force applied in any downward or horizontal direction at any point along its top edge of at least 100 pounds, 445 N, for guardrail systems installed on single-point adjustable suspension scaffolds or two-point adjustable suspension scaffolds, and at least 200 pounds, 890 N, for guardrail systems installed on all other scaffolds. When the loads specified in paragraph G4(7) of this section are applied in a downward direction, the top edge shall not drop below the height above the platform surface that is prescribed in paragraph G4(2) of this section. Midrails, screens, mesh, intermediate vertical members, solid panels, and equivalent structural members of a guardrail system shall be capable of withstanding, without failure, a force applied in any downward or horizontal direction at any point along the midrail or other member of at least 75 pounds, 333 N, for guardrail systems with a minimum 100-pound top rail capacity, and at least 150 pounds, 666 N, for guardrail systems with a minimum 200-pound top rail capacity. 1926.451 G4X. Suspension scaffold hoists and non-walk-through stirrups may be used as end guardrails if the space between the hoist or stirrup and the side guardrail or structure does not allow passage of an employee to the end of the scaffold. 1926.451 G411 through 1926.451 G415. Guardrails shall be surfaced to prevent injury to an employee from punctures or lacerations, and to prevent snagging of clothing. The ends of all rails shall not overhang the terminal posts except when such overhang does not constitute a projection hazard to employees. Steel or plastic banding shall not be used as a top rail or mid-rail. Manila or plastic or other synthetic rope being used for top rails or mid-rails shall be inspected by a competent person as frequently as necessary to ensure that it continues to meet the strength requirements of paragraph G of this section. Cross bracing is acceptable in place of a midrail when the crossing point of two braces is between 20 inches (0.5 meters) and 30 inches (0.8 meters) above the work platform, or as a top rail when the crossing point of two braces is between 38 inches (0.97 meters) and 48 inches (1.3 meters) above the work platform. The end points at each upright shall be no more than 48 inches (1.3 meters) apart. 1926.451 H. Falling object protection. 1926.451 H1. In addition to wearing hard hats, each employee on a scaffold shall be provided with additional protection from falling hand tools, debris, and other small objects through the installation of toe boards, screens, or guardrail systems, or through the erection of debris nets, catch platforms, or canopy structures that contain or deflect the falling objects. When the falling objects are too large, heavy, or massive to be contained or deflected by any of the above listed measures, the employer shall place such potential falling objects away from the edge of the surface from which they could fall and shall secure those materials as necessary to prevent their falling. 1926.451 H2. Where there is a danger of tools, materials, or equipment falling from a scaffold and striking employees below, the following provisions apply. 1926.451 H2I through 1926.451 H2 the area below the scaffold to which objects can fall shall be barricaded, and employees shall not be permitted to enter the hazard area, or a toe board shall be erected along the edge of platforms more than 10 feet (3.1 meters) above lower levels for a distance sufficient to protect employees below, except on float, ship, scaffolds where an edging of 3/4 by 1/2 inch 2 by 4 centimeters, wood or equivalent may be used in lieu of toe boards, where tools, materials, or equipment are piled to a height higher than the top edge of the toe board, paneling or screening extending from the toe board or platform to the top of the guardrail shall be erected for a distance sufficient to protect employees below, or a guardrail system shall be installed with openings small enough to prevent passage of potential falling objects, or a canopy structure, debris net, or catch platform strong enough to withstand the impact forces of the potential falling objects shall be erected over the employees below. 1926.451 H3. Canopies, when used for falling object protection, shall comply with the following criteria. 1926.451 H3I through 1926.451 H3 canopies shall be installed between the falling object hazard and the employees. When canopies are used on suspension scaffolds for falling object protection, the scaffold shall be equipped with additional independent support lines equal in number to the number of points supported, and equivalent in strength to the strength of the suspension ropes. Independent support lines and suspension ropes shall not be attached to the same points of anchorage. 1926.451 H4. Where used, tow boards shall be 1926.451 H4 I, capable of withstanding, without failure, a force of at least 50 pounds, 222 N, applied in any downward or horizontal direction at any point along the tow board. Tow boards built in accordance with Appendix A to this subpart will be deemed to meet this requirement. And 1926.451 H4 2, at least 3 1/2 inches, 9 centimeters, high from the top edge of the tow board to the level of the walking/working surface. Tow boards shall be securely fastened in place at the outermost edge of the platform and have not more than 1/4 inch, 0.7 centimeters, clearance above the walking/working surface. Tow boards shall be solid or with openings not over 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters, in the greatest dimension.